Hey, how's it going, guys? So we're back with more Star Citizen content. If you're new channel, welcome. We're going to be checking out another video by the TheAstroHistorian. So shout out and credit goes to the TheAstroHistorian for this video. And this one's called Famous Ships of the UEE Navy. Now, what I'm trying to figure out is, are they going to be like ships like the names and like what made them famous, or what types of ship? Actually, you know what? Now I think about it, it's gonna be like ships that like what events made them famous, and like what their, I guess you could say, like capabilities are, like what they can achieve, and I guess if they played a significant role in a certain battle, like they were the turning outcome as to why this victory happened, and things like that. So I'm really curious to see what famous ships are in the UEE Navy. I know some of them were mentioned. Like in several other videos. I do remember one, I think it was called the UEE Stanton or something like that. And crap, I forgot the other names, but I'm sure the TheAstroHistorian will mention them. So without anything else, let's just jump right into the video.
In the universe of Star Citizen, humanity has been united in a single government for over 570 years. In that time, the Navy of the UNE, UPE, and UEE stood in humanity's defense, and those ships and crews that served with distinction in those navies have gone down in history as some of humanity's finest. That in mind, come with me and explore the famous ships of the UEE Navy. My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to The TheAstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today we'll be looking at the universe of Star Citizen and the most famous ships of the UEE Navy. Let's start with the most famous Perseus of the UEE Navy. The original Perseus gunships were built to intimidate. First constructed in the late 2520s, these colossal predators stalked the Perry Line, making them a regular fixture in humanity's era of tension with the Xi'an.
Okay, so it sounds like he's also going to just clue in like what types of ships are in the UEE Navy. So it's kind of like which ships are famous, but also what types of ships there are too.
Their ominous presence kept those looking to stir up trouble on their best behavior, while their massive cannons obliterated those who didn't heed the warning. Everything about the Perseus's physical form was designed to inspire awe and dread. It earned the moniker the Subcap Slayer for its impressive size 7 weapons, designed to slay medium and large ships with ease. Being built before ships of its size could support shields, it relied on armor and point defense for its protection, with the ships being retrofitted for shields later in their lives. The most famous of these ships was the UES Achilles. In 2946,
Name sounds familiar.
Ernst Bishop led the UEE naval forces in Operation Mandrake. This was an operation to stop the suspected invasion of the Oberon system by a Vandal clan, similar to the one that hit Vega a year before. Bishop gathered a massive fleet for the operation, and among the many ships that made up the operation was the crew of the UES Achilles, an aging RSI Perseus gunship. During the battle, it was tasked with holding a vital part of the line when it was engaged by multiple Vandal destroyers, ships it was never intended to fight. The Achilles and her crew fought ferociously against the odds and managed to down 2 Vandal destroyers before she herself was damaged beyond repair. While speculation, the combination of the Achilles' armor and ballistic size 7 ammo might have surprised the destroyers, as the Achilles could take far more punishment than other ships of its class, like the Hammerhead could, due to its archaic design. This impressive feat helped turn the tide of the battle in favor of the Empire, and did not go unnoticed by Admiral Bishop, who personally lobbied RSI to restart production of the Perseus model again for the use against the Vandal, bringing
Well
the
done,
entire
Achilles.
Perseus line back to civilian and military markets with a brand new redesign. Going up in size, the next few ships are all famous Hammerheads from the Navy roster. Created in
Hammerheads.
2765, the Hammerhead was the result of Project Monitor, which called for a dedicated anti-fighter platform that could serve as both a key element of the standard fleet screen and as a cost-effective patrol ship to replace the aging Gwyn class, which was itself a converted Collier design hastily adapted for the newly needed role of fleet defense. To date, there have been a total of 4 flights of hammerheads, with a theoretical 5th flight having undergone jump tunnel tests. With that many ships built, there are more than a few notable examples of hammerheads which have stood out amongst their peers. The first being the UES Triggerfish.
Oh, I don't know.
One of the first 6
Triggerfish.
hammerheads ever built, the Triggerfish cut its teeth in spectacular fashion.
So I am familiar with the Aegis hammerhead. And I mean, like, what stood out to me is like, yeah, it does look like a hammerhead, but there's no other ships that look similar to it so far that I know of. But however, the turrets on the side of it, basically it looks like it literally has no blind spot. But the thing about the hammerhead is there's a turret in the back, there's several turrets on the side, and I mean, the amount of barrels there are, so if you get to the side of it, then you're screwed. But I think maybe it's just from this image, but it doesn't really look like there's anything in the front. So that because the turrets have to like turn front, because we just saw it a minute ago. But however, that does take time, and you have to aim as well. So there aren't that many blind spots when it comes to this ship. So I say that's its capability. But however, it doesn't look like there's anything at the bottom or top as much. But then again, I don't know what the full rotation of these turrets are. So.
In 2774, when a Vandal raiding squadron encountered a skirmisher group. Though the firefight was minor, the results were clear. 8 Vandal ships were repulsed without ever entering visual range of the battle group's flagship. 6 scythes were shot down and 2 forced to escape, with the UES Triggerfish scoring an impressive 3 air-to-air kills. The Triggerfish would go on to destroy an outlaw raider and her escorts later that year, becoming the first ace hammerhead crew. The Triggerfish's performance would go on to prove the ship's usefulness to the UEE Navy, and the Empire doubled its initial hull and then, within a year, requested permanent production. The next famous hammerhead on this list is the UES Torsk. The last of the original hammerheads constructed, Torsk saw significant action during the 2-week war.
So it's an older version.
Piracy operation in 2781, aimed at eliminating a number of known outlaw hideouts. Intended as a
Okay, so there is a turret on the top of the hammerhead, right?
show of force to easily establish the Empire's dominance. The Torsk, which single-handedly captured a transport laden with slaves, became the sole highlight of the mission. Then we have the famous Ghost Ship, the UES Paul C. Gerwald.
Ghost Ship?
The Gerwald was separated from her unit and supply chain in 2818 during long-range reconnaissance in what was then believed to be Vandal-occupied space. Suffering extensive damage to her navigation system and a totaled jump drive, the crew of the Gerwald spent 18 months disconnected from the fleet before a passing explorer managed to scope their short-range beacon. The Gerwald's story was adapted into a propaganda vid, the Iron Will, although historians quickly noted the ship itself was played by a surplus Gwyn-class patrol ship. The next of the hammerheads on this list is the UES Elizabeth Collier. The Collier was a hammerhead assigned to screen Desron-33. Shortly into the siege of Tiber, a surprise force of Vandal bombers attacked the squadron's flagship.
So right now, 6 minutes in, the only ship I know or actually remember hearing was the UEE Achilles. So far, this is pretty much brand new to me.
The Veldor, and scored a crippling blow to her magazine. The Collier's captain, Commander Tyson Granding, took the ship's controls himself, maneuvering the patrol ship into enemy fire to save the crippled destroyer. The hammerhead prevented the destruction of the Veldor, but suffered a direct hit in the process and was lost with all hands. Grandling was given a posthumous promotion to captain. The longest-serving hammerhead is the UES Xanth Montes, assigned to the UEE's 3rd Fleet. During her 40-year service, the XM earned more individual battle stars than any other hammerhead in history, in addition to 27 other citations. At the time of retirement, her commanding officer, Commander Alex Train, had begun his career as a gunner during the XM's very first assignment. The Xanth Montes painted mission board currently resides in the Imperial Aerospace Museum. One of the few remaining Flight 3 hammerheads still in service, the UES Carebald is part of the United Empire of Earth's Ready Reserved, moored off MacArthur. While her engines are kept unpowered, she has a reserve crew available who can bring her and the rest of her squadron to full readiness in 12 hours in the event of a major conflict. Cairbalde was last activated during the infamous Jack Gellin incident in 2943 that briefly threatened to lead to more involved conflict with the Xi'an over a capture of a supposed spy. Nicknamed 4-5s by her crew, the UES Nephili is an active Flight 4 hammerhead currently attached to the UEE Pathfinders for protection and scouting duties. Nephili is painted in the Pathfinder's livery and holds the informal record for farthest hammerhead from home after a series of long-range jumps that took her exploratory squadron well beyond the boundaries of known space. Nephili is a combat veteran with over 80 confirmed Vanduul kills and dozens of successful combat operations. The last hammerhead on this list is the UES Enyo. Enyo is an active-duty hammerhead currently attached to the Home Squadron, moored at Earth, where it has been used to ferry diplomats to fleet functions and naval reviews.
There's a lot of famous
Enyo
hammerheads.
has reinforced shielding, additional armor, and a reworked interior custom designed to support such visitors. To date, she has borne the temporary Imperator 1 call sign 4 times. Externally, Enyo appears identical to any other service hammerhead. Next, we'll discuss the two most famous Carracks in the UEE Navy.
Oh,
the
here we go.
R-11 and the S-1132. Note that the UEN does not formally christen Carracks. Instead, they're given either the designation R for research or S for survey, followed by a numerical designation. The leading 1 in the whole number identifies the size classification, 65 meters or greater, and the following digits are issued numerically. The first Carrack off the line in 2823, R-11 was informally referred to as the Carrack by her crews in the first years of the UEE Navy's formal exploration efforts. Due to tool and die issues, she would not be joined by R-12 until 2825, meaning the R-11 was doing a lot of the early testing and experiments that future ships would learn from to improve their techniques. The R-11 made history by conducting the first ever close survey of a star system's icy exterior cloud, mapping 37 distinct points in the Killian system as part of a Navy effort to establish a new type of early warning system in aid of the military complex at MacArthur. No additional cloud surveys have been conducted since, indicating that the proposed system may not have been viable. The next famous Carrack is the Survey Carrack 132, which entered service in 2831 and was
So, right now, this is the first time I'm hearing that there are Carracks in the UEE Navy, to be honest. And on top of that, because aren't Carracks like usually the exploration ships? I mean, they do have their uses. I mean, exploration ships are meant to explore, so it could be great for reconnaissance. It could be great to like scouting or anything like that. But I just didn't know like there's gonna be famous Carracks or even Carracks in this video at all. I thought it was gonna be the Perseus gunboats, the Polaris, the Bengal, and those kind of ships. But it really did surprise me what kind of ships there are now.
assigned to long-distance survey missions along the Xi'an border at the former Perry Line, popularly referred to by the call sign assigned in her final operation in 2836, Good Queen 12. The Carrack's last reported communication was a buoy check-in from an assigned patrol en route to the outer reaches of the Osiris system. After missing the next 2 scheduled reports, mission organizers dispatched search and rescue spacecraft that found no trace of the S-1132 in its assigned area. 30 years later, the fully intact Carrack was discovered on the lone moon of the Indra system, which was a full jump away from Osiris. All of the ship's systems were found to be functional, and her stores of food and medical supplies were largely intact, although there was no indication of the crew's whereabouts.
Interesting.
The next ship
Maybe
is
they
one of
got
the
taken?
oldest ships on record, the corvette, the UPES Gilchrist. The
Corvette?
Gilchrist was of an unknown make, but was famous for an action that she and her crew would undertake in the First Tavaran War.
I don't know the Gilchrist.
During that time, the Gilchrist was under the command of the famed commander Hester Polaris. She was born to a family of explorers.
Oh, now it hit me. Yeah, I do remember this name, the Gilchrist. I mean, when I said Gilchrist, I was like, I don't know the Gilchrist, but then as soon as I said it, I was like, wait a minute. Actually, it does ring a bell now. And when they brought her up, yes, I do remember this name. Wasn't like the Polaris like named after her or something like that?
And entered into the Navy shortly after the formation of the UEE in 2523. Polaris spent her first deployment as a military liaison, monitoring terraforming operations. In 2530, during the Palace incident, which was the first contact with the Xi'an, she was selected to take part in the hostage exchange with the Xi'an. Afterwards, she received a commendation for her participation, which led to her promotion into commanding the Gilchrist. When the Tevarin War broke out in 2541, the Gilchrist was suddenly on the front line of humanity's first interspecies war, engaging an enemy they had not prepared for. And on August 12, 2543, the Gilchrist was ambushed on a routine patrol by a Tevarin strike fleet. Previous reconnaissance sweeps had incorrectly labeled the system as clear, so Commander Polaris and the crew of the Gilchrist were caught completely off guard. Elite Tevarin boarders known as the Nuule had already infiltrated the ship by the time the rest of the fleet attacked. Thus, while personally defending the bridge from boarders, Polaris also engaged the Tevarin fleet's overwhelming numbers by keeping the ship mobile, utilizing environmental conditions in the system to keep the Tevarin off balance, and even re-engaged the Tevarin ships that had broke from the fight to attack a local settlement.
Man, not going down without a fight.
Cite how Polaris repeatedly placed herself and her crew in harm's way to save civilian lives. She ultimately destroyed 3 Tevarin capital ships before the naval reinforcements arrived to rout the rest. Sadly, shortly after the battle, Commander Hester Polaris succumbed to wounds she received during the Tevarin boarding action. Polaris' bravery distinguished her for the ages, but it was her adaptability and effectiveness in asymmetric warfare that has made her a legend among strategic scholars, and why the engineers at RSI would eventually honor her legacy by naming the latest class of corvette after her, the RSI Polaris. Next on the list is more famed because of its role as the hero ship of Squadron 42, the Aegis Idris frigate known as the UES Stanton.
There it is.
Originally envisioned as a corvette, the Idris was part of a range of forward-thinking plans that attempted to imagine the form that Earth's military would need to take after the successful conclusion of the then-raging First Tevarin War. These plans imagined a peacetime UPE with significant expanded borders, both with territory annexed from the Tevarin and the increased colonization of more distant planets. The ship that would begin its space trials in 2549 was a completely different beast to the initial specification. A massive frigate-class spacecraft massing several times the original proposal, mounting an enormous railgun and carrying a fully functional flight deck capable of supporting multiple classes of fighters and bombers.
And look at that big gun at the front.
The ship would go on to have 3 separate distinct flights. Built in 2872, likely in the Aegis Idris System factory complex on Locke in the Idris system, the UES Stanton is a Flight 3 Idris. It was first attached to the 2nd Fleet 351st Battle Group between 2872 and 2935. In 2935, it was moved to the 87th Battle Group, where it remained during the events of Squadron 42. The captain, Noah White, got his career started on the ship, eventually returning as the ship's captain late in his career, with his executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Sophia Kelly. Before the events of the game, it was tasked with rescue and disaster relief in Farron and perimeter sweeps along the old Perry line.
To be honest, though, I didn't know how well known or how big the UES Stanton was going to be, even though I did watch the Squadron 42 gameplay video. But then again, the Squadron 42 gameplay video was actually one of the very first videos that I saw that helped me get into Star Citizen. So there's that, but also I didn't think that the Idris frigate was going to have such a big role in the game as well, because this is the ship that the main character currently resides in.
We find it the sole UEE presence in the Odin system in 2946, tasked with keeping the peace in the system that had the important and massive station, the Shubin Mining Company's own Archon base. Next, we'll look at 2 of the most well-known ships of the Aegis Javelin-class destroyer. The Javelin class was first built in 2690 as part of Aegis's second wave designs for the military.
It's been a minute since I've seen the Javelin.
To the teeth, with a bristling array of weapons and even the ability to launch a heavy fighter. Designed as a modular spacecraft, the Navy can make major conversions to the Javelin for different roles rather than constructing individual specialized capital ships. Javelins are used from everything from convoy escorts to fleet support to orbital fire suppression to reconnaissance and force and fleet intercept missions. The first of these destroyers we know of is very familiar to players who've been around the last few years. I'm, of course, talking about the Sentinel of the Stanton system, the UES Warhammer. Built
Name
in
sounds familiar, yeah.
2832, the Warhammer is a Flight 3 Javelin, first commanded by Captain Omar Singh, and is likely attached to the Second Fleet. The ship began to make a name for itself in 2884 during the fall of Caliban. On July 7th, in the early morning hours, a massive clan led by a kingship entered the system. The only defenders of the system, the 89th Logistics Squadron, were woefully overmatched and called for aid. The Warhammer was likely the first reinforcements to arrive the same day to aid in the retreat of the last remaining civilians to make it out. Being entirely overwhelmed, the ship fought insane odds to keep the civilian refugees safe. The ship kept up a constant fire rate at the Vandul, with reports from gunner Tobin Lamech that the guns were so hot that they were warping the ship's superstructure.
Yeah.
For its heroic actions, the ship earned the Ribbon of Valor.
I remember that detail when I saw the Javelin video, where they kept on saying like they kept on shooting the turrets that the barrels ran so hot that it was like so hot in the like turret cockpit, I guess you could call it, and it warped the hull and everything was melting. The sweat was literally evaporating, things like that.
May 20th, 2931, an outlaw named Dean Keller set in motion a multi-system manhunt, ran over 5 systems with 36 participants from both sides of the law, with the largest part taking place in the Nexus system, long known as the Crossroads of Crime. In the aftermath, the UEE needed to do something in response, and with the Nexus system having been a large part of the problem that allowed Keller's run to last as long as it did, their sights were trained on the long neutral system. A resident of the system once famously said, "All roads lead to Nexus, and you'll probably get robbed on all of them." It was once reported that all crime in the UEE could be traced back to the system. Thus, with their reputation on the line, the Empire annexed the system and sent in a joint task force of advocacy and navy to clean it up. Part of that task force was the UES Warhammer, being front and center to the conflict, as various gangs united to fight back against the incursion of the UEE forces. The last well-known action of the Warhammer was one players actively participated in, the Xenothreat incursions into the Stanton system, which began in 2951. The Outlaw Group began to attack shipping lanes in the Stanton system, which resulted in the activation of the CDF to push them back, with the help of the Warhammer, who had been stationed in the system for its defense. In 2951 alone, the Warhammer was responsible for destroying 70 enemy vessels and several capital ships during these incursions. A less well-regarded Javelin destroyer also resides in the Stanton system, though the UES Flysa has now become a permanent part of it. Finished in 2779, the Flysa was a Flight 1 Javelin and initially was used to patrol systems near Vandal territory.
Don't know
its
the
first
name.
captain was Thembeka Muhali, who led the ship through many years of honorable service, including intercepting and destroying 3 Vandal blades in the Odin system in 2801, and recon mission to Vandal space in 2819. After Muholi's retirement in 2857, the Flysa was assigned to the Stanton system under the command of Captain Chin Orriston, who answered to the first UEE leader of the Stanton system, Admiral Pavlina Marlin. The ship was moored in what would eventually become the floating city of Orison on the gas giant eventually known as Crusader. In 2862, the Admiral received the report that an illegal mining operation had sprung up on what would eventually become known as the Moon of Daymar. The UEE had restricted most commercial and industrial development in Stanton since its discovery a decade earlier, a stance that confused and angered many at the time. With a fleet of ships working together, those running the operation were stripping an incredible amount of ore in a very short period of time. Admiral Marlin sent a fleet of fighters and the Flysa to Daymar to escort the offending ships to an impound lot and levy severe fines. Unfortunately, during the operation, one of the mining ships attempted to flee and exploded. The Fleisa was fatally damaged by the explosion. The resultant shower of debris and ore fragments shredded the thrusters, causing an overload when the captain ordered a retreat. The Fleisa then careened into the surface of the moon below.
Well, there it goes.
All 65 crew members were lost in the accident, and the wreckage of the ship remains on the moon to this day, an almost lost piece of Stanton's history being claimed by the deserts of the moon. Next, we'll look at a ship that is wrapped in a bit of mystery at the moment. First seen in the latest Squadron 42 preview,
the Bengal?
We know the existence of an RSI cruiser based on the design of the Bengal. One of these ships is a well-known cruiser known as the UES Integrity. The ship was made famous for a 45-minute recruiting film called Integrity and Honor, which released in 2935. This was filmed on the ship during a 2932-33 leg patrol along the Vandal border, and highlighted its conflict with the hostile alien species. Sadly, we don't know much else except it's likely present at the Battle of Vega in 2945, based on some background information in the same Squadron 42 video. The last ship is more of an infamous ship than a famous one, the UES Olympus. The Olympus was a battle carrier in the brand new UEE when, in 2571, it pursued a band of pirates and rebels home to their hiding place in the undeveloped Null system. Its commanding officer, a rather ambitious and certainly arrogant rear admiral, pursued the band of criminals near the planet of Ashana. The carrier's complement vastly outmatched their foe, but the admiral in charge wanted in on the kill personally.
Oh, so he got ambitious.
Into a pass that was too close to the planet. The Olympus was caught in the planet's gravity and impacted on the world's surface, with only a few survivors. Those survivors included the carrier's air combat patrol, 4 stiletto interceptors, the immediate predecessor of the Gladius, belonging to the carrier's defensive complement, plus 2 others who managed to scramble and launch as the ship went down. Taking advantage of their unbelievable ship's fortune, the rebel forces rallied to eliminate the remaining ships and lifeboats. The battle that followed was spectacular. The 6 light fighters were able to hold off their attackers for almost an hour, scoring an astounding 37 confirmed space-to-space kills, including
37?
a pocket destroyer with only their surviving energy weapons. The last stand of the Olympus Cap has gone down in history as one of the greatest last stands in human history, and pushed the UEE to begin development of the Aegis Gladius.
The
Olympus has also become famous for what happened after it was lost with all hands.
So in a way, it started off kind of bad because the leader became like greedy and a bit ambitious, saying like, I want the glory of this kill. And that led to its downfall and destruction when he thought like he overestimated his chances. And it went into that, but it ended in a great way, showing like it can, even in that kind of condition, or even in that kind of condition, it could still take hits and it could still defend itself. So I guess in a way it ended really well, but just the way it went was completely unnecessary.
The crash quickly attracted scavengers who began to pick the ship clean.
As usual,
until
there's always scavengers.
They realized that it was a more pleasant environment than the windswept caves they had previously called home. When the Navy did not dispatch another force to eliminate the wreckage, squatters moved in and turned the Olympus into a town of the same name.
Oh, nice.
Today, the ship is home of everything from a Tavaran market to a warren of hotly contested individual homes for those living on the planet. Black market goods are exchanged here, but only in limited quantities. The carrier's inhabitants know better than to give the UEE an excuse to bomb the wreckage into oblivion. The Olympus is a semi-dictatorship, with a Tavaran named Nescus running the entire show as the Null system's de facto pirate king. Famously, Nescus actually unified the gangs of the system to defend against an invading Vandal clan led by the famous Vandal known as Voodoo. Yes, that is the same Voodoo made famous by the Arena Commander game mode, Vandal Swarm. Those are just a few of the notable ships of the UEE Navy, from tough gunships to tragic capitals and everything in between. In the universe's richest star citizen, we're sure to see many more in the years to come. I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed what you saw, think about liking the video.
That was great.
Subscribing for more content and hitting the bell icon to be notified when these release. I've always been a sucker for universes where creators do the classic iceberg world building. For those not in the know, that's when you make a world and give it just enough background and history to make it look like you have a massive world and deep history without having to spell everything out. It's great for writing a universe where you want to tell a story while making it feel lived in and not having to really lock yourself into tedious world-building specifics.
Is this a commercial?
Like what it's showing right here? Done this fairly well, in my opinion, with a good framework and timescale to build a structure which they can add whatever they need to down the line while creating a coherent universe for players to enjoy right now. These little details, like famous ships, add to that illusion of a deep history, and are fun little side notes. Now, if they could just start adding these stories in-game, it would be nice, if not just to clean my comment section up just a tiny bit. Based on feedback from the last video I did, I will do another comment highlight. This is where I pull comments, questions, and corrections from previous videos to spotlight. The first is from my video on the subcap ships of the UEE Navy, and is actually from multiple comments.
So this is what he's just doing for the last few minutes.
Was, quote, "The amateurs discuss tactics."
If you guys want to just skip this and go straight to my outro, or you just want to end the video, I fully understand. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate your support.
The professionals discuss logistics, unquote, which is most famously attributed to Napoleon Bonaparte. However, the quote is also attributed to American World War II General Omar Bradley, whom the Bradley IFV is named after. The thing is, generals and kings as far back as Alexander the Great and Sun Tzu have said similar quotes, and even General Nathaniel Greene of the American Revolutionary Army once said, quote, "Logistics is the stuff that if you don't have enough of, the war will not be won as soon as."
Logistics is very, very important. As a matter of fact, when it came to like choosing MOSs and things like that, I actually chose that pretty high on my list as well. I mean, I kind of hope that I'm a logistics officer too.
Unquote.
But my top pick is intelligence.
This quote predates Napoleon by several decades and Bradley by almost a century. So that was my point. Some clarification there. Another comment from the subcap video comes from Michael D. Bruce, who said, quote, "This is a great video. I'd love to know more about Starlift Command and how it breaks down into groups," unquote.
Starlift Command.
Personally, I'd love to do a standalone video on Starlift Command. There isn't really enough information on them to do it justice. However, I do know that Starlift Command is a joint operation between all branches of the armed services. The ships are generally operated by the Navy, while the Army and Marines generally operate logistics attached to the command, including loading and unloading cargo. There are also some hints that Starlift Empire 993 commented, quote, "Has the idea been floated that the inhabitants of Stanton were escaping members of the former government? Hence, how they knew it before the UEE, how they kept it a secret, and why they would conduct guerrilla warfare on the UEE once they got there."
They got the wrong gorilla.
Just a thought. Sounded to me like they might have hid the existence of Stanton, fled there like rats from a sinking ship, and planned to rebuild their empire away from prying eyes till they were betrayed, unquote. That's an interesting idea, that the original settlers were Mezerites who fled the fall of the Mezers, though there isn't any indication that Stanton was inhabited by Mezer supporters. On the contrary, the first settlers may have actually been from Pyro, given the similarity in construction the abandoned settlements in Stanton have with Pyro settlements, though it is possible that the Dusters are themselves the descendants of Mezerites. No, it's a good question. Thanks for your questions and comments.
Okay, so he only did like, what, 2 or 3?
At the end of videos, let me know in the comments below. I'd also like to thank those on screen now for supporting the channel financially. If you want to throw in a few credits, think about becoming a member on YouTube. And if you want a bit more for your contribution, join the Ko-fi or Patreon. Patreons and Ko-fi members get early, ad-free access to all videos, including exclusive early access to my long-running Complete History of Star Citizen lore series. Check those out now in the top right if you want to know what you're getting. Thanks again for watching, and remember, ex Historia ad Astra.
Okay, so that was a really great video, and I really liked it personally. So for the ships that were like talked about in here, there was a lot of famous hammerheads. But the ones that really stood out to me were two of them. First one was the UPES Gilchrist, mostly because of Commander Polaris, because I do remember her being spoken once. I think it was the RSI Polaris video of like how it got its name. So it was really cool to like hear her story again and how they honored her memory and legacy by naming a very powerful ship after her. But also the one at the end about the UEE Olympus, because what was unique about this one compared to the other ones was not like every other ship managed to make it back, but this one ended up into a wreck, but still managed to have a pretty good ending of like taking down air-to-air kills and also making a great last stand. And now it's transformed into a town. So I kind of like that story. And as always, the UEE Stanton, which is pretty well known, especially with the Squadron 42 video, and you hear the name several times because I'm like, that is the protagonist, the main character. That is where he is, and that's where the ship's going to be focused on. But either way, this was really great. Famous ships of the UE Navy, so I really like it. Shout out to the TheAstroHistorian for explaining it very well, because most of these ships I didn't even know. I just knew about the Achilles. Well, I heard about the Achilles. I knew about the Stanton a little bit better because it was mentioned several times in other videos. The Gilchrist, well, not exactly the Gilchrist. I knew Polaris more than the Gilchrist. So that was really cool. And one thing I learned was the Carracks, because I didn't think that there were Carracks actually in the UEE Navy. That was a new fact that I learned. So just learning new things every single day. So that's all I got for today, guys. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that notification bell so you know when I drop another video. And also shout out to all my members, subscribers, viewers. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your support, guys. I really do appreciate it. So without anything else, see you guys next time.